Welcome to TKX Stories, where the unexpected unfolds in the most ordinary places. Today, we take you to a quiet, peaceful village, where a tradition as old as time itself still holds sway. At first glance, the day seems bright and cheerful, but beneath the surface lies a secret so chilling, it will leave you questioning everything. What is the lottery, and why do the villagers follow it so blindly? As the tension rises and the truth unravels, you'll discover that not all traditions are worth keeping. Stay with us until the end. This story will haunt you long after the final stone is cast. It was a clear and sunny day, June 27th. The warmth of summer was settling over the village as the townspeople gathered in the town square for an annual tradition, one that had been held for as long as anyone could remember: the lottery. Children were the first to arrive, their laughter filling the air as they ran about, gathering stones in their pockets, unaware of the darker purpose behind their innocent game. Adults followed soon after, chatting and exchanging pleasantries as if this day were no different from any other. The clear and cheerful setting contrasts sharply with the dark and violent tradition that will soon unfold, emphasizing the unsettling normalcy of horror when it becomes routine. The children's play, though innocent on the surface, foreshadows the violence to come, showing how easily cruelty can be masked by familiarity. Mr. Summers, the man who conducted the lottery each year, arrived carrying the black box. The box was old and faded, its wood chipped and splintered. Though many had suggested replacing it over the years, the idea was always quickly dismissed. The black box was a relic, a symbol of the village's long history, and it seemed no one was willing to challenge the tradition it represented. As Mr. Summers placed the box on the stool, a quiet tension settled over the crowd. The lottery was about to begin. The black box, worn and weathered, symbolizes the blind adherence to tradition. Even as the box decays, the villagers' refusal to replace it represents their resistance to change. A reflection of society's attachment to harmful customs, simply because that's the way it's always been. The tension in the air mirrors the villagers' subconscious awareness of the violence they are about to perpetuate, yet they remain passive participants. The villagers stood silently as Mr. Summers began the ritual. He called out the names of each household, and one by one, the head of each family stepped forward to draw a slip of paper from the black box. The crowd watched intently, though their faces were tense and expressionless. As each man returned to his family, he held the folded paper tightly, waiting for the moment when all would reveal their fate. The lottery was a solemn occasion, and no one dared question its purpose. The solemnity of the ritual reveals how deeply ingrained the lottery is in the villagers' lives. Their expressionless faces and tense silence suggest that, although they are resigned to the process, they are not without fear. This scene reflects how traditions, no matter how cruel, can strip people of their individuality and compel them to participate in senseless violence without protest. Late to the gathering, Tessie Hutchinson hurried toward the square, joking about how she had almost forgotten what day it was. The crowd made way for her as she joined her family, laughing nervously. Mr. Summers, unfazed, continued with the ritual. As Tessie stood among the villagers, her light-hearted attitude contrasted sharply with the grimness around her. Little did she know, her life was about to take a horrifying turn. Tessie's carefree arrival and her initial dismissal of the lottery's importance serve as a stark contrast to the dread felt by the other villagers. Her late entrance foreshadows her eventual fate, as she begins the story as a seemingly inconsequential figure, only to become its central victim. This moment symbolizes how easily people can overlook danger until it directly affects them. Mr. Summers continued calling names, and each family head stepped forward, drew a slip of paper, and held it tight without looking. The crowd grew more anxious, their faces betraying a quiet unease, but still, no one spoke out against the ritual. After all the slips had been drawn, a moment of silence hung over the village, broken only by the rustling of papers in nervous hands. The lottery was nearly complete, and everyone knew what was coming next. The act of drawing the slips, done in silence and with growing tension, represents the villagers' passive acceptance of their fate. The quiet unease reveals their internal conflict. They fear the outcome, yet they are complicit in the system. This scene highlights how people often feel powerless in the face of oppressive traditions, even when they sense the wrongness of it. As each family head revealed their slip, it became clear that the Hutchinson family had drawn the marked paper. Tessie Hutchinson, realizing her family was chosen, immediately protested. "It wasn't fair," she cried, stepping forward. Her voice, once cheerful and dismissive, now carried panic. But the villagers, including her own family, remained silent, accepting the outcome as they had done so many times before. The lottery had spoken. Tessie's sudden protest when her family is chosen marks a shift in her attitude, from casual indifference to desperate resistance. Her cry of "it wasn't fair" emphasizes the arbitrariness of the lottery, but also reflects a common human response to injustice. Complaints only arise when the consequences affect oneself directly. The silence of the villagers in the face of her protest demonstrates how society can be complicit in cruelty when it benefits from the suffering of others. With the Hutchinson family chosen, Mr. Summers instructed each member of the family to draw again from the black box. Tessie stood between her husband and children, her hands trembling as she reached for the slip. Her family's fate now rested on this final draw. The villagers watched closely, their faces filled with a mix of anticipation and relief that they had been spared. One by one, each family member opened their slip of paper. Tessie was the last to reveal hers, a black mark. This scene emphasizes the randomness and brutality of the lottery. Tessie's family, once safe within the crowd, is now isolated and forced to confront their doom. The villagers' sense of relief reveals the selfishness and cowardice inherent in the system. Everyone is content as long as it is not them. Tessie's draw of the black mark symbolizes the ultimate consequence of blind adherence to tradition. The victim is chosen not for any reason but by mere chance. As Tessie held up the slip with the black mark, a collective murmur ran through the crowd. Without hesitation, the villagers, including her own family, began to gather the stones they had collected earlier. Tessie screamed, "It isn't fair. It isn't right," but no one listened. The first stone was thrown, then another, until the crowd fully descended upon her, ending her life in a horrifying display of mob violence. The lottery was over, and the village returned to its normal routine, as if nothing had happened. The final scene reveals the terrifying power of collective violence. Tessie's cries for fairness and justice fall on deaf ears, showing how deeply the villagers are entrenched in their tradition. Even her own family participates, indicating how societal pressure can erode personal morality. The return to normalcy after the stoning reflects how easily violence can become normalized when it is disguised as tradition, leaving the villagers unshaken by the cruelty they have committed. As the dust settled and Tessie's final cries faded into the summer air, the villagers quietly returned to their daily lives. The stones, now stained with blood, were scattered across the ground, forgotten. Mr. Summers looked over the crowd, his task completed, and with little more than a nod, the village dispersed. Life in the small town continued, as it always did, with no one daring to question the events that had just transpired. The lottery would come again next year, as it had for generations. The indifference with which the villagers returned to their lives shows the chilling normalcy of their violence. The scattered stones serve as silent witnesses to the brutality that has just taken place, but to the villagers, they are nothing more than tools of tradition. This final scene encapsulates the central theme of the story: how deeply ingrained cultural rituals can desensitize individuals to the suffering of others, making cruelty an accepted part of life. Jackson leaves the reader with a powerful critique of the dangers of unexamined customs. And so, the lottery comes to its grim conclusion. What began as a seemingly ordinary village tradition revealed itself to be a shocking act of cruelty. Tessie Hutchinson, once a carefree member of the community, became the unwilling victim, sacrificed in the name of an unexamined ritual. The villagers, bound by tradition, committed violence without question, turning a blind eye to the injustice in their midst. This story reminds us of the dangers of following customs blindly, without understanding their purpose or questioning their morality. When we allow tradition to overpower our sense of justice, we risk becoming complicit in harm, even against those we care about. The lottery warns us, it's easy to be silent when we're not the ones chosen, but what happens when we are? As you leave this tale behind, ask yourself, how often do we accept the unacceptable simply because that's the way it's always been? In a world of change, it's our responsibility to challenge traditions that no longer serve humanity and stand against the violence hidden beneath the surface of our own societies.